I'm recording you.
Oh, I'm cold.
Lovely, yeah, lovely day here in Portsmouth,
Oh, it's
and
lovely.
yeah, and one of the, I think one of the biggest attractions we've come here to see in the UK is the Mary Rose, which was Henry VIII's ship that sunk in, when was it? 1545.
We'll soon find out again. Now,
Well, it
won't
was, yeah, it was, and it sunk. We're going to go down there afterwards because it sunk just off the coast. But this is the Mary Rose behind us. It was found in 1971 after sitting at the bottom of the English Channel for a couple of hundred years, and then in 1982 it was raised. And it wasn't an easy thing to do, to raise it. They had to have a lot of support all over the ship in order to bring it up. And King Charles, Mum, did you know King Charles actually dove down several times to see it? And then in 1982 they managed to bring it to the surface, and then they've got it in this big building behind us here. And an interesting thing that they had to do was, as the ship started to dry out, they were spraying it with a combination of polyethylene and water for nearly 30 years in order to slowly let the water evaporate out of the timber so that it wouldn't dry and crack.
Big job.
Yeah, so we did the Victory. Before that we did the Warrior. And we've been building ourselves up to the Mary Rose because it's the one that we're most excited about.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Let's go. And there she is, behind the glass, so that it can't be damaged. And although the board behind us said that they had turned too sharply because the crew wouldn't obey the captain, some of the DNA tests on the individuals that they found on the ship were showed that they were Spanish, and there was a Spanish armada that had crashed on the Cornwall coast a couple of years beforehand, and apparently they had no food and drink, so they got put into service by King Henry VIII. So it wasn't that they weren't obeying the captain. Most of them were Spanish and didn't understand what he was saying. It really is tiny. After having visited the Victory and the Warrior, it really is tiny. I think it's interesting how it was considerably older as well, that the hull was thatched. It has timbers running lengthways, but also timbers running across.
Those are the first three timbers that were found when the guy went, one of the divers went down in 1971.
Yeah.
They'd been looking in the 60s, the late 60s. Alexander McKee had basically put his life's work was to find the Mary Rose. He mortgaged his house. South Sea Diving Club helped him by doing 28,000 dives, and somewhere in 1971, one of his divers went down, and then he saw these three pieces of wood sticking up, which was those three orangey red pieces you can see there, and basically radioed up with, "I think I might have found something, Chief."
He took 22 years to find it, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean to say, well,
So
22 years of research, and it was his life's work at the end of the day. But then, 40 years now she's been up, but from those three pieces of wood, basically this miracle occurred.
Yeah.
Because without that guy, he's swimming, when you look at the water,
Yeah.
he's swimming in soup, he can barely see in front of his mask, and yet he saw those three.
So in 1545, when it first sank,
Yeah.
they brought in pearl divers from Africa, didn't they?
Yes, they did, and those
But
are
these guys could, and some French ones, yes,
Yeah.
and they could hold their breath for an incredible amount of time. So they must have known where the Mary Rose was resting.
Yeah, and I mean to say there is, at the end of the day, somewhere along the line,
Lots of
Alexander McKee, there's going to be there's been bits of information that McKee was a brilliant historian, And
Yes.
he basically had all the maps and he had all the ideas, and he knew where guns had been found at different stages. So he started zoning in on where he thought it was.
Yeah.
But the proto-Victorians in 1836 tried to blow her up. So we were very lucky at that
Yeah.
point that they didn't manage to do that, because otherwise we wouldn't be here either.
Yeah.
But from finding those 3 bits of timber came the whole story of then finding her, excavating her, lifting her, preserving her, and then building this brilliant museum around her.
Yeah.
So it's every one of them's a miracle, because can you imagine building a museum around something that's one of the world? If you break it, you can't get a new one.
Yeah.
There is no new one, it's the only one in the world.
Yeah.
So therefore the pressure the guys were under to build this museum, and it's such a beautiful museum.
I wonder what happened on this day in history.
On this day, November 28, 1682, Betty Paris, Elizabeth Betty Paris, was one of the young girls that accused other people of being witches at the Salem witch trials. The other accuser with Betty was her cousin Abigail Williams, which caused the death of 20 Salem residents, 19 of which were hung, and Gail Corby was pressed to death. What terrible little girls.
It's tragic, but let us not forget that Exodus 22:18 clearly states, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." And in the late 1600s, everyone obeyed the law.
Yeah.
That was biblical law, and everyone obeyed it.
Yeah. Also on this day in 1582, 100 years beforehand, in Stafford-upon-Avon, William Shakespeare and Anne Hathaway paid £40. Equivalent to today's pounds is £12,000, 261. For their marriage license. He must have really loved her.